I assume if it's already saved. All right, we'll go ahead and get started, and then Beverly says she'll join us in just a moment. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started, and Ms. Penderle will be joining us shortly. Again, I appreciate your patience. I know you've had a long first 2 days. Thank you so much. And we're going to go ahead and return to the regular session and start off with a moment of silence. May I please have you stand? And Chief Minter, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I know that was impromptu, but I saw your familiar, positive face, so thank you so much. Excellent. We'll go ahead and start with address agenda 5.1. Consider an adoption of recommend any changes. Any governing board members like to change anything? No changes, Ms. Connect? Okay, no changes. Thank you. We'll proceed with number 6.1, staff recognitions. Ms. Airy.
Good evening, President Seha Martinez, members of the governing board, Mrs. Pallas Thompson. Well, we have a very exciting lineup of recognitions because, as you all know, we have kicked off the 2018-2019 school year. So it's really an exciting time of year. Our employees are busy, buzzing in their classrooms, out in the field, and doing so many great things to make for just an awesome start to the new school year. So I've got kind of the play-by-play for you of how our first day went. So I'm really excited to share how it went across our 42 schools and all the efforts of our staff members to make it all happen. Our HR department, as you all know, worked tirelessly throughout the summer, processed roughly 260 new teachers, so brand new to our system. The really cool thing about that is we had a number of them that were brand new, maybe fresh out of college coming to us, but we also had a number who were returning to the profession as well, and that was always really cool to see that maybe have left or retired and are coming back to be with us. So we are welcoming them back into our family. In addition, we had about another 150 support staff members or classified employees who also joined us over the summer, so we were really thrilled to have them. Before our school year even kicked off, our administrators were engaged in several days of training. We had a really intense focus on safety for all of our administrators, all of which were trained in a special program through FEMA, so we were really excited to have them participate in that training and to get that certification. SMART goals, student proficiencies, community partnerships, all kinds of great things that were going on as part of our administrator training throughout the year. And for the first time, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in just a little bit, all 3,500 plus of our staff members were able to gather together under one roof to kick off our school year. So that was also a really exciting time for our district. Yesterday, August 8th, we opened our doors, had more than 37,000 students walk through them for their very first day of the school year. 2,378 of them were kindergartners, and that's always a really special time for our kindergartners to be there. Transportation, they were well prepared, of course. We had 748 bus runs made just yesterday, morning, midday, and afternoon runs and departures, and they transported more than 11,000 students that rode bus to and from school. So that was also exciting. I saw Sandra here with us today, and I know our food service department reported had a really great first day. They served more than 2,400 breakfasts across our system and close to 13,000 lunches, which is just incredible. I could go on and on about how wonderful our day was and how incredible our staff members were, but we tried to summarize all of that for you in a video. So we hope you will tune to the screens and we'll share a few of the highlights from yesterday. Thank you to Mr. Colley for putting that together for us. And what you can see from that web address that we flashed up there on the screen, peoriaunified.org/First Day 2018. We have even more photos for you to go through. So as parents share with us using our hashtag for the first day, as they share photos with us, we're posting all of them up on our website, along with all the other photos that our team was able to take on the first day of school to get all our schools represented. So it was an incredibly exciting day. I think the little boy with the bow tie probably took the best dressed award home for the day. But we were just thrilled to kick off just a wonderful start to the new school year. It's always a really exciting time of year. I'll transition, if I may, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, because one of our other favorite things to talk about at this first meeting of the new school year with our governing board is to introduce you all to our employee associations and our community as well, introduce you to the leaders of those groups. So it's really a pleasure to have them here with us today, and I'll be pretty brief as I'll let them maybe talk just briefly about their goals and what they do, and maybe introduce any other members that they have with us for the year. But to begin, if I could, I'll ask them to stand so we can give them a round of applause for their service and for what they do, and then we'll invite them up so certainly they can share a little bit with you if that's okay. As you know, we have two associations that represent our teachers, and so we're really pleased to have representatives from both of them here with us today. From the Classroom Teachers Association, or CTA, Renee Crawford and Mary Schuett, if you can stand. From the Peoria Education Association, or as you know them, PEA, Trina Berg. We also have the Peoria Principals Association, and representing them, Mrs. Dana Matisek and Mr. Paul Bauer both had other commitments today, but I know they'll likely have leaders joining us at a future meeting, so they wanted me to pass along their regards, but also wanted you to know how much they appreciate your support and how much they look forward to engaging as well. And then I'm also pleased to welcome Christy Davis, representing our support staff this evening. And if I could invite, I think, the four of you up, or the three of you, if you want to select someone, and maybe let you share just a little bit more with the board and introduce any other members you may have with you today. Begin with you, Mrs. Schuett.
Good evening, President Seha Martinez, Superintendent Palace Thompson, and board members. I'm happy to have my co-partner here, Renee Crawford. It's always easier to divide the work and do that. Today we have with us Frances O'Leary, who is one of our executive board members, and Leanne Pocock, another board member. We also have several others who could not make it tonight. So we are really excited to start the year. We're excited about all the things that are happening, lots of stuff this fall, and getting behind the district and supporting things. So we are happy to be here, and we really enjoyed our back to school celebration. That was awesome. Yes. So great. Thank you. Anything you want to say? All right.
I'm good.
Good evening, President Seha Martinez, governing board members, Mrs. Palace Thompson. First, I'd like to thank these wonderful people for welcoming me in at the end of the school year and letting me see exactly what they do. It was very much appreciated. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be the spokesperson for the classified employee group, and I'm looking forward to this next school year and the exciting things that we have coming. Thank you.
Good evening, President Seha Martinez, members of the board, Superintendent Linda Palace Thompson, administration. My name is Trina Berg. I am again honored to be the president of the Peoria Education Association. With me tonight, I have my exec board. So I have our secretary, who's not going to probably stand because she's broken, Melissa Grimscheid. My vice president, Melissa teaches physics and I don't know, like all physics, I don't know, at Centennial High School. Frank Eager, my vice president, teaches ceramics at Sunrise Mountain, and Jessica Batty teaches special ed at Sunrise Mountain also. Excited to work with the district again this year. We have lots and lots of things happening. We have a bond that we're going to be working on. We've got two board openings, 2 seats coming up at this election cycle. We'll be working on that. We, of course, have Invest in Ed and all the Red for Ed stuff that is continuing this year. So we have lots going on outside of school, behind the scenes, all of our district committees. Policy review is coming up. And, of course, PEA always has our main goal that we're going to be pushing again this year. So looking forward to an awesome, very exciting year again this year. Thank you.
Just one more thank you to all of our associations for all that you do, and know how much the district supports you. So if we can give them one more round of applause. Well, we have one final special recognition this evening, and for that I'm going to invite Mr. Savoy up to the podium for that presentation.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Airy. Good evening, President Seha Martinez, members of the board, Mrs. Thompson. I'm glad for this brief moment because I could not let this person get away. Chief Minter, would you join me up here, please? While I say all these nice things about him, I want him really close. Good evening. I stand before you this evening to recognize an individual who we as a district have been proud to work with since he joined our community as the Chief of Police in the city of Peoria in 2011. This is Chief Roy Minter. During his tenure, Chief Minter has been laser-focused on the core values that we find near and dear to us in the Peoria Unified School District, such as safety, community policing, and growth. The strong relationship that we have had with Chief Minter has allowed us to have a school resource officer on each of our high school campuses who serve as more than just a cop on campus, but rather they are seen as mentors, counselors, teachers, role models for our students. With Chief Minter's support, the relationship we have had with the school resource officers has flourished over the years, and we are very, very fortunate to have them be part of our Peoria Unified family. Under his leadership, Peoria Unified has refined its safety plan time and time again to ensure the procedures we have in place in our schools are the very best they can be. We have done this through the tabletop exercises, with Chief Minter present, and providing feedback and criticism when necessary to support the safety needs of our schools. Now, this is the thing I love about this man. Whether he's seen at the Peoria Arts and Cultural Festival or at a coffee with a cop, he is ever present in our community. And that's the first thing I learned about Chief Minter. He was at everything. You would always see him. Not just to show his face, but really to remember each of our names and to ask how we were doing. He also asked me about a couple of good barbershops in the city of Peoria. I had to sneak that one in. Before he retires in Peoria and heads to the beautiful town of Savannah, Georgia, in his next adventure, we would like to send him off with our sincere gratitude for his service in our community. On behalf of the Peoria Unified School District, thank you, Chief Minter. Thank you very, very much for your guidance, your support, your leadership, your expertise, and most importantly, for keeping all of us safe as your top priority. Let's join me in a round of applause. Your turn.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. And to President Ceja Martinez and the board and Ms. Thompson, I want to thank you very much. It has really been an honor for me to serve this great community and to serve this outstanding school district and your great leadership staff and your great staff in general. What I can tell you is you have made my job very easy. Running an outstanding school district, making sure you stay on top of all student issues, and such a great high graduation rate really made my job as a police chief very, very easy for me. So I want to thank you. I also want to thank you for all the support you've given me over the years in implementing different programs throughout the school district, whether it's adding school resource officers or our Lunch with Blue or our Youth Citizens Police Academy. You've always been there and you've always supported us. We've always given you the commitment to partner with you and build a strong relationship and do the best job possible to keep the Peoria Unified School District safe. And I can tell you, whether Roy Minter's here or not, that commitment will continue with the city of Peoria. The other thing I want to do is to make sure that I acknowledge a very special member of your staff, and that is Steve Savoy. Of course, it always starts with relationships and partnerships. Steve has always been there anytime I've needed him. I've called him early in the morning, I've called him in the afternoon, I've called him out of meetings, I've called him late at night. And it's always important for us to have that relationship and that partnership so you're not trying to establish it in the middle of a parking lot when you have a crisis going on. I even ran into Steve one time, and I still can't figure out how this happened. When I was on vacation in Michigan at the airport, Steve Savoy was there. But that just shows you how dedicated he is to making sure that he stays attached to me at all times. So
Or he's a stalker.
I wasn't going to use the S word, but no, seriously, you really have a special person on your staff. I really appreciate it. And once again, on behalf of all the men and women of the Peoria Police Department, thank you very much for your support. Thank you for your dedication, and thank you for everything that you do every day to continue to move this outstanding school district forward. So thank you all very much.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez, would you all like to come get a photo with Chief?
Would love to.
Trying to kill myself, but I haven't made it yet. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Airy. Okay, moving on to 6.2, board recognitions. We'll start with Ms. Dunn.
I don't have anything at this time, but I do want to say that I'm real sorry to have missed the big party. I had unavoidable family obligations at that time, but I understand a good time was had by all, and I do want to do my part in welcoming everyone to the new school year and to say how proud I am of our district and the excellent people that we have and the support of our community. So welcome back, everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Sanibel?
Yeah, I certainly echo Ms. Stone's comments. I did have the honor and really privilege to attend the opening ceremonies. And it, again, just continue to be honored to sit on this board and to serve you and all the 4,000 associates, across the district and our 37,000 plus students. It was very inspiring. Certainly the collaboration that I saw, and the smiles and the energy. And then when you looked at this video and you saw a lot of smiles and energy in the teachers and staff and the students, it continues. So to all those who planned for that event, at the DAC. I know, Danielle, you and your team, played a big role in that. Thank you. It was just a great way to honor those that we respect and value, and those are, certainly the 4,000 individuals that serve our students, that are the reason why, we have accomplishing moments. It is your passion and your commitment, that certainly touch a heart and inspire hope in all of our kids. So thank you for that.
Ms. Penderle?
I also had the honor of being there on Monday. It was a phenomenal morning. So if anybody I would suggest people to go back and take a look at that, especially the dance number from, I think, a few of our admin. It was very good. And then I also wanted to say that I was able to go to the Arizona Career and Technical Education Conference in Tucson in July, and that was a really good conference. And I do have some information to bring back to you to give to your science teachers.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Connect?
I'll just offer my congratulations and kudos to everyone who put on an amazing event on Monday. It exceeded even my expectations, and that's hard. I mean, I knew it would be great. It was even better than I expected. And also, thank you for inviting the chief tonight. I think that was a really nice touch and a great gesture to show really how important a partner he's been during his tenure. So, great idea. Appreciate that.
Okay, and that leaves me. I have a couple of things. Yes, Danielle and your team for presenting what I have been on campuses, and the parents can feel the love. So the impact is past just the staff alone, so thank you. And Ms. Dunsey, your guest speaker, way to keep a great eye out. I hear great feedback, and so kudos to you on finding him. A couple other things. The first day of school, I had the pleasure of attending some of our wonderful schools in the city of Glendale. Ironwood High School, Sorrel Ranch, Copperwood, Marshall Ranch, and what I saw there was breathtaking. First, I saw an administrator cover a class so that a teacher can take their child to enjoy the first day of school. That impact alone in that relationship just shows how much our leadership cares about each other. I saw new kids and new parents in front of offices, and that was one of my favorites because I knew how awesome the experience that they were going to have in the classroom. And so to see their faces, they were a little scared, and Miss Linda Pellis-Thompson took us and we spoke to them, and at the end of the conversation, I felt good leaving them in the awesome hands that they were going to be in. So kudos to all of them. The next thing, I also had the pleasure of joining Ms. Penderle at the CTE conference, and Mr. Croto, he had the pleasure of driving her around. Thank you. He didn't leave me off on the side. But three big takeaways. One, we took a workshop class on culture, and I challenge everybody, parents, teachers, to have your elevator speech ready. What do you do? How do you do it? And why is it important? And it should be about 30 to 40 seconds. And if you are committed to this community, the city of Peoria, Peoria School District employees, staff member, you should have your culture speech ready. What do you do? How do you do it? And why does it matter to you? The other piece was high school counselors. I made sure we got a lot of feedback last school year, and our high school counselors shared a lot of their insights, and so I attended, and some big takeaways where our parents need to be connected to our counselors, and they have great relationships with our Director of CTE, Dr. Patty Paltram, but our high school counselors help our students flourish. So parents and teachers encourage our kids to go see them because they are the gateway to future options. And the last thing, which is a big takeaway, I went to the special ed ADE session, and we have a resource. The ADE has offered to join us on one of our study sessions as one of their collaboration consults, absolutely free. So when we get ready to have that conversation, special ed this year, they will be joining us to continue those efforts. And that is it. So thank you again for the opportunity to serve. I had tears in my eyes. Mrs. Linda Pellis-Thompson, the last thing I wanted to end is your speech, your presence, your leadership. We are grateful, and there are not enough words that we could say to say thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And Ms. Linda Pellis-Thompson, would you like to share anything else?
Mrs. Sayas Martinez, members of the governing board, team, I just again want to thank everyone who's here tonight. I know it was a long week, and it was only, 2 days long so far? Amazing. You're just amazing. We had the opportunity to see so many sites, and thank you for joining me on many of them. It was a delight. Each of our children ready. Executive Council could not be done without you. You never really get credit for all the work you did, but my goodness, everything has come together. And Governing Board, let me pay that back to you. You are extraordinary. Each one of you, thank you. Thank you for all that you do, and you do it. You do brilliantly. You do it with a sense of humor, and I think we're in a good place. So thank you. Appreciate you all.
Okay. We are now moving on to 7.1, request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. We do have one. Ms. Casey Franklin.
President Martinez, Superintendent Pallis-Thompson, members of the governing board, thank you for allowing me the privilege to briefly address you this evening. For those who are not aware, my name is Casey Franklin, and I have the honor and privilege of serving as the chair of the PAC called Support Peoria Students that exists to support the passage of this year's Peoria Unified School District bond. I wanted to provide you a brief update. Our committee has continued to meet. We have finalized designs for marketing materials and are looking forward to some upcoming kickoff events and presenting our marketing materials and plans to the community. We've enjoyed widespread support from both the City of Glendale and the City of Peoria, from elected officials and from candidates for office as well, and are incredibly grateful for the outpouring of support that has come from the community. I again wanted to offer my time to any of you on the board or any community members here tonight. If there are any questions or concerns that arise about the bond, I'm more than happy to speak to those, and I'll be available this evening after the meeting if anybody has concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along to 8.1, consent calendar, approval of consent calendar items. Are there any items that our board would like to pull? Ms. Connect? Nothing? Mr. Sanibel? Okay, no items are going to be pulled. That's exciting. And do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Dunn to approve the consent calendar and a second by Mr. Sandoval. Motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item 9.1, address items, no.
We can skip
We
that
skipped
one.
that one. Number 10.1, Peoria Unified District Organization Chart.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening. That went quickly. Mrs. Sejas Martinez, members of the governing board. In April of 2018, I visited with you and added a few different changes to a chart that was one of our working charts. And I said at that point we would come back together again and try to get an organizational structure, a chart together that we can use, that you can approve, and that we can include in our audits, in our various policies when people come to visit us, and certainly as we look ahead to a superintendent search, what does our organizational chart look like? So the key functions of a chart are not just to have that chart for those reasons, but to delineate some of the work responsibilities, who's in charge of what, to establish what some specific tasks are that are kind of embedded in those programs or positions, to clarify the work relationships, who reports to whom, to establish the hierarchical structure of what the decision-making process would look like. So who do I go with first? And then if I want to climb, how do I find the next person? And then to provide just an information portal, if you will, on who's who in the organization. Back in 2011, that's a long time ago, was the last time we officially approved an organizational chart. So in any of our literature that we send out when people are asking, what is your approved chart? This is the one that we're referring to. And you look back, and I tried to figure out today what was my position back there, and the K-12 administrators were called Administrators for K-12 Academic Growth, and there were, to point out, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in charge of those particular positions, and then we still had all the public relations, but they had different titles, not necessarily different jobs, different titles. And note in there, we had both a legal counsel at that time that reported directly to us, and as well as a deputy superintendent. When we moved forward, there was a proposed organizational structure on January 12th, 2017. Included in that were certain ideas that came forth that we followed through on. One was to have a chief instructional officer, a chief academic officer, and a grant writer. Those positions themselves were approved, but the chart itself was nodded on, and I remember we were there, and I believe we all felt that we had actually approved it, but there was no official approval at that point. So that's why it comes necessary today to move forward and look at what we need to do. In April 2018, as hopefully you remember, we split the chief financial officer position into two separate positions when we knew that Mr. Hicks was leaving, creating that additional position of a chief operations officer. So we'd have the two positions filling in those two components. We eliminated the executive director of special services that went over an enormous job and a myriad of responsibilities, and replaced that with two separate positions, a director of special ed as well as a director of federal programs. And then we dissolved the position of director of curriculum and director of professional development and created a put-together position of the executive director of curriculum and professional development. Those are the positions. Again, we didn't have a chart at that point, but we said, all right, we'll get back. We knew we need these functions to operate more effectively as we moved into this school year. Our strategic plan this is not the graphic that we're using. Danielle, don't get nervous there. But as we looked at a strategic plan and said, well, if we were creating this thing called public education school, and we knew that these were the areas, what people would we need to make this thing move correctly? So as you look at the four areas that are spinning around: community connections, stewardship, student success, safety, and well-being, in the center, we talked about our community drives it. Our governing board is telling us exactly what, yes, we agree, this is the thing we're doing. The superintendent's there to follow through, especially this evening. You're going to be looking and talking about policy, and our job is to make sure that happens. And then our deputy superintendent, which we did not have, but in a strategic plan, a deputy superintendent is critical. I believe our group believes, and I believe we believed it in 2011, and before that, to make sure that the direction that we're moving is somebody is holding it all accountable. Now, I know the superintendent does that, but it's from a more visionary point of view. The deputy, it's, for example, when we look at policy tonight, there'll be a need for you to approve it in 2 weeks, and then for the superintendent to say, all right, you heard what the board wanted, now is everything in place? Does the practice match the policy? We put a team together, and the deputy would be a key player in making sure that things are followed through, so they don't fall through the cracks or wind up on sticky notes somewhere. As we look at those areas, and we see the four strategic areas, we know that our chiefs, we need a chief of public relations and marketing. We have that to look at the community connection piece. Stewardship of community resources is falling into the financial chief. The safety and well-being fits in with the chief operations officer. And then we have the student success component, which is the academic support officer. They all fall and interlap and interweave, if you will, but those are the key people responsible for each of those. And then, as you see on the side, well, what do you need the other chiefs for? The chief of strategic planning and technology, and those are the fun character to the left, is the person that says, all right, are we moving on time? Is this thing correct? What is the accountability as far as you said this was going to be done? Is it in fact done? And in fact, you finished it. What's our next step as we're moving forward? To the right is the chief personnel officer with respect to do you have the resources, specifically the human resources, to make it happen? So we had this sitting on a blackboard and started to put it together, and we said, yeah, we do need these people for strategic planning as we're going through. So the proposed organizational chart is not dissimilar. It's not like, oh my gosh, this is so different from everything we've done. I would be honest with you, I'm not a fan necessarily of the word chief. It just doesn't do it, except for probably the chief financial officer. I would probably have called them if I had a choice, and I do, I guess, but I left it to not cause more change and confusion. These are all administrators for strategic planning, for personnel, for communications. It could be called that, but for this right now, they're all chiefs. All those yellow components sat around the strategic plan, and you see where the people are underneath them. Typically, we list the schools. All the pink components are there are our executive directors. They're all lined under the chief academic officer. And then we have all these directors of transportation, food service under the operations person. And the deputy superintendent would be the person that puts the operations and the academics together, so we're a comprehensive school district, not in silos. Directly under the superintendent is certainly the deputy, as well as the chiefs that I just talked about. So they're moving. The only real difference in reporting is that the director of research, I believe, needs to report, as it did years ago, directly to the superintendent in order to allow for information when you get it to be very clear and not watered down. A superintendent needs to know what is the data telling us, not what we'd like it to tell us. So we've always had the director of research in the past, certainly in that area. So that's what I'm recommending is the chart. I'd like to be able to put that chart in place. Note that sitting there is not a chief instructional officer, because we've put the academic support officer, the chief academic support officer, and all of those people dealing with curriculum, instruction, and assessment on one side of the building under one person. It's been way too separated many, many, many years, and I believe we'll get better results if they're all under there, and the deputies there. I'm recommending that the chief instructional officer, to get us through the remainder of the year, be now called a deputy superintendent. It would be no cost change. It would be no change other than you have approved in the past that the deputy superintendent receives a car stipend, allowance. And that would be the only change to this chart to currently what exists in operation right now. But if you approve it, we're allowed to take this chart now and dispense it on our audits and our updates and anything else that people require from us. Any questions?
All right. Thank you very much for that. And we'll go ahead and start with Ms. Connect.
Thank you. I really like that deputy superintendent is called deputy superintendent and not instructional officer, because there are so many things unrelated to instruction under that umbrella. And I think when we first formed that position, that was one of my concerns, that it really didn't explain in the title what the responsibilities were. So I think that's a very good change. I'm hoping that, and maybe you can just answer this question, that as these job descriptions are delineated, that there is some succession plan in the event that any one of these individuals that has these positions is unable to serve, that there is an understanding of who would fulfill those responsibilities.
Mrs. Connect, that's a great question. Hopefully, the way that this is laid out, each of these executive director for curriculum and professional development, for example, are working very closely with the chief academic support person. I would expect that any of them would have an opportunity, and we don't want Dr. Bell to go anywhere, but we certainly is being prepared. She's working with them all together. I've never seen more collaborative working together teams, to answer your question. They're all going over and working with each other and doing it. What we have this year, too, that's kind of exciting is each of our executive directors, as well as our chief academic support officer, is working with schools directly. So we're getting into the schools, they're getting in there, they have smaller amounts to reach, to be accountable for, and then they come back together and share. So under that, we're seeing much more connectedness to allow for exactly what you're talking about, and under each of the others, absolutely correct.
Right. And people should know each other's jobs, so in the event that they can't
Absolutely.
report to work, that the gears keep turning. So, good, I'm glad that some thought has been given to that. One of my questions was about budget implications, and you said that with the exception of a car allowance, that there should be nothing that would interfere with existing contracts, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Good. Okay, now the only other question I have, and this is a little more minutia than I usually get into, but it just so happens that our excellent chief of technology is an excellent strategic planner, and we are using him in that capacity. But organizational chart should be an organizational chart without consideration to the specific individuals, right? Because if somebody leaves or moves, you want to bring someone in. My question is that a natural fit? I mean, would we expect that any future chief of technology would also be gifted in the role of strategic planning? Or are those two separate things that in our immediate circumstances happen to be a combination, but isn't necessarily one that should be on the chart like that?
Again, that's a great question. I would hope that when we're looking at this thing called technology, I'm hoping that in the future, that doesn't necessarily have to be a standalone person. That strategic planning, though, should, along with things like cybersecurity and those types of things. I don't know. You're right. We would have to look for, again, the job description that we're looking for. You're absolutely right. We don't want to build a position for the person. And in some cases, we've been doing that. In this particular one, and I know that I can speak for Mr. Gay, even though he's not here, he's on a personal venture tonight.
Those are his strengths, but I'm not sure that those strengths naturally always go together.
Correct. If it was his choice, we probably would have taken out the technology piece out of that name and called it Chief Strategic Plan, and data analytics is really the plan that we need somebody to really look at data, look at strategic planning, and that the technology is a tool to do that. So if he were to decide, hey, I'm leaving and doing something fun, it would be somebody who is a strategic plan and probably data analytic person.
Just some thoughts.
Possibly.
I'm happy.
You know, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I'm happy to approve this, but just some thoughts that came into my mind.
Thank you.
Ms. Penderle.
Well, thank you for fielding all of my questions earlier today. I appreciate, I know I had you on the phone for quite a while. The only thing, I like the thought that went into this. The only thing that I would suggest, and it's just me, is to have our governing board's attorney go through the deputy superintendent, the change with the car allowance, just to make sure everything is covered.
We can make that happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanibel?
Yeah, thank you. So I know we brought up the term chief, but I'll tell you it'll look good on a resume. You have the chief title on there. But aside from that, Ms. Pallas-Thompson, I do like the fact that, yes, you went over the functionality of an org chart and why it's important to be very thoughtful. But one of the things that you said is this particular structure is going to influence collaboration and synergy, amongst all, I'm going to say, verticals within the DAC, which I think is critical, as we, move forward, with a fully informed, robust, comprehensive strategic plan that everybody, one band, one sound, right? Everybody's moving forward on the same page. So thank you for that. I think I do like Ms. Connect's comment around the succession planning, if you will. It is important that we have, a very thoughtful professional development process, within the district that'll, certainly, allow those individuals who do aspire to move up to other positions. Yes, it'll definitely help, to build a bench in the time of need, but to have a very thought out, I guess, really way or process for individuals to grow professionally. So I'm in agreement, I think with everything you said and the thought behind and the rationale behind this plan, and most notably the collaborative and the collaboration. I certainly I like what I see in front of us and certainly support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Dunn?
Well, I have to say, this is the most easily understandable chart we've seen. It's clean, and I like that. I do support this, and I think that it makes a lot of sense, and we will overall, I think anybody that sees it will have a greater understanding of our build So I like it a lot, thank you.
All right, thank you. I have a couple questions. I appreciate the time and effort. Just simple ones. One, I was looking at the grant writer. Where did you put the grant writer under?
Where's the grant writer? Two places, actually. When we started going, not that she's not important, but as we started going out to the schools, they're not sitting right now on the chart. But the grant writer currently is under the chief academic support for part of what they're doing, because most of the grants are written with an eye on curriculum. Having said that, she's also, or but she currently is sitting under the chief financial officer, because there's a whole lot of writing that has to do to be comprehensive with the budget.
Okay,
So,
that makes
in
sense.
in both of those spots, but they're not sitting on the chart. Nor, as you know, the schools themselves, we used to have, these schools are here, they're there. Those will be on mini charts that'll be addendum to the proposed chart.
Okay, and I have one question, and I don't remember, I was trying to look through the meetings. So when we approved the Chief Operations Officer, I thought the title was Risk Safety
It is.
super long.
It actually is. It'll say that. It should say, Michelle, right? Chief Operations. We've changed his, it's the, he's making fun over there. It's the coop. We call him the Chief Operation, and it goes on. It should say safety on there, too.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I just want to make sure safety.
There's been
the word
arguing back and
safety.
forth between who's in charge of safety, and I have two of my gentlemen over there claiming it.
Perfect, and I know that we approved it as a board, we're talking about
it will say that.
following policy and law, and if it's a title that we've already approved, I just want to make sure that it's also written correctly when we post it on our
Perfect.
site.
Good thought. Thank you.
That's a better alignment with the strategic plan, too.
Right.
And just overarching words, I think of two things, safety and accountability. Safety, because we all experience as a district in an emergency, who's in charge. And it's nice to see that there is that who's next in line to help us move forward while we're going through some things. Hopefully that never happens again. We've all received training on emergency preparedness. If there was a catastrophic event at this building, where would we move? And so these things help put that in place. And then accountability as we move forward and have these high expectations and goals, that the community, we as peers, colleagues, can hold each other accountable on where we are to help support our efforts. So overall, thank you very much.
You.
And we look forward to continue to move forward. Anything else? Okay, so then this is an action item. And I move to approve the organization chart as proposed with the recommendations highlighted by my peers.
I will second.
Excellent. It passes 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to 10.2, fiscal year 2019 policy projection overview. Mr. Steve Savoy in your new tie. I love it.
President Martinez, members of the board, Superintendent Thompson, just wanted to really spend some brief minutes with you as an additional recap to our last contact at the last board meeting, where I provided you some information on an overview of the work that we were going to do on updating and aligning our policy to the guidelines that we've received from the Arizona School Boards Association. We're beginning the process tonight, so that's a big hooray for all of us here working together. And you've seen this before, and I've kind of already recapped that. So the activities to date, we have updated our project management charter, we've identified our team, and we've created a timeline that I'd like to share with you. This is the timeline. So our goal is aggressive, but we feel we can make that goal. And as you see here, you probably had a chance to review it, but just briefly, the different policy updates that will be presented to the governing board will occur beginning this evening, believe it or not, with, I believe, 7 policies. And then we'll follow next week with Mrs. Myers. And then we'll continue on through with the different policy sections. Each of it is laid out by a policy section. And then the idea is to do the first read and then follow up at the next meeting with the second read. One of the things, the main reason why I'm circling back with you this evening for a few minutes before we begin is the conversation that we had at our last board meeting was really, I felt vigorous. It was good, and everyone had feedback and input about the process. And so I just wanted to recap that because I thought the board really provided us good direction, and I think it was very clear for us on what your expectations were and how we were to move forward. And some of the main points that we took back from that was, well, first of all, Mr. Savoy, make sure we're going to be compliant, that these updates that we're doing make the district compliant, and that's our main priority. That's what we're doing. We talked about risk averse. We want to avoid things that would create potential hazards for us. Time sensitive. Let's get this done. Let's make sure that things are done on time and in the correct order. How does it align with our strategic planning? Input from the board was not to, spend time, dissecting every word, not to get into the habit of wordsmithing, but look at the big picture. But at the same time, the board, the key to this is looking at it ahead of time and being prepared. We also discussed that because if you have questions or you're curious about that, this would be the time to bring it up. Although we say don't wordsmith it, but hey, there's some big decisions here, and these are the policies that you set as a board, and you'll have that time to do that. One of our board members talked about, hey, this is an opportunity for all of us to learn, but we're going to learn together. It's good to have that exposure, the conversation about policy. The work that we do here, we're going to take back to our principal meetings and assistant principal meetings, and they will take that conversation back with their teachers on those policies that may impact them in the classroom. So we're going to create this conversational dialogue that should go both ways, and I think help all of us. There was a question about cost and payments, and I really wanted to clarify that for everyone. I know we provided that information to the board, but we did want to share it with our community. The question was asked about the $500 that we were going to pay for the audit. We did contact Arizona School Boards Association. We also spoke with our business department. We did not pay that $500. In fact, Arizona School Boards Association said, you're not really ready to do that yet. Let's get these other things cleaned up first, and we can talk about that later. The other thing that I did find out, I just wanted to share with the board, we do pay $385 per month for this service to Arizona School Boards Association that provides us a continuous flow of information and keeping us in line with statutory guidance or from the Arizona State Legislature, as well as things that happen at the State Board of Education downtown, as well as any federal guidance that comes down. Just as a point of reference, just yesterday we received a document from Arizona School Boards Association, 66 pages in length of other updates. So they're working all the time that we don't have the time to be looking at all those different avenues and providing us that information. So that's what that cost covers. And then lastly, I just wanted to share with the board, you asked about, well, how many of these policies are just Peoria district policies and which are the ones that are copyrighted by ASBA? So worked on this with Mrs. Obashon. She got it going, and then I followed up with a little piece this past week. But overall, there are 413 policies through all the different sections. And of that, 293 of those policies today carry the copyright stamp of ASBA. 120 of those policies certainly were designed by ASBA, but you as a board, or maybe some of these were actually done before some members were on the board, we as a district made some adjustments to the policy. I'll just give a real quick example about field trips. We have some of our own guidance and things that we wanted to put in policy about field trips. So that's just an example. So it's actually comes out to about 41% the district has personalized to meet our needs. And the board certainly has that option as you go through that work. And then lastly, I'd just like to say, I want to clear the way for Mr. Croto, who's going to take us through policy section E and F this evening. Unless you have any questions for me, we could go on to Mr. Croto.
This is a great pause. Governing board members, are there any comments? Ms. Connect, Ms. Penderle, Ms. Dunn, Ms. General? I only have one comment, and I want to say thank you for the timeline. This is very transparent, clear, the expectation is set, and I would like to see this on our district website, so if parents sometimes we receive emails about a certain policy, about curriculum, that they have an opportunity to send us feedback if there is a policy that we are going to address, that somehow, some way, that our community has access to a policies, because some of these policies do impact our community, like the transportation, if private, so on. And then our staff, this is a phenomenal time to have your voice, our teachers' organizations, our administration, that they want to have to be heard, that here's the timeline and what to expect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Our policy manual is available online.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Croto, so I've been super excited about getting ready and diving into policy. I've been jumping out of my skin, literally.
Well, good news, I'm here to do that.
Have my papers.
Into all day long. President Seha Martinez, members of the governing board, Superintendent Thompson. I'm here to bring 7 policies to you this evening, as Mr. Savoy eloquently went through. Tonight will be the first reading. It takes 2 readings to go through these. Each one will be separate approval by the governing board. I'm going to highlight the areas. I'm not going to read the entire policy to you. I'm going to highlight the changes, obviously provide time for questions. And then after the reading, after it's approved, they will go on the consent agenda for the second reading. So if there's questions, you can always call myself or Mrs. Thompson and all that. So just kind of highlight that before I start in.
Perfect. So let me just recap that. So the first read, governing board, community members, anybody could essentially join the conversation.
Absolutely.
Then the second read, once we have come to consensus, it's going to be in the consent agenda item, and we're going to vote and move forward. Okay?
Like usual, you may pull it off consent, like you have the opportunity to do if there needs to be further discussion.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And that would happen if there's no recommendations after the first read, it would go to consent. If there are recommendations, then we review it again a second time before it goes to
Correct.
consent. Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification, Ms. Connect. Okay, we're ready.
Okay, we are going to start with our first policy, which is EBAA, Reporting of Hazards and Warning Systems. It's actually a pesticide application notice to our stakeholders. House Bill 2190 initiated these changes to a number of these changes that we'll talk about tonight. The intent of this policy is to ensure that students, employees, and parents, guardians receive adequate notice prior to us applying any pesticides or herbicides on our campuses or any district buildings. ARS 15152 gives us the guidance in these applications. They are scratching in this, providing continuing instruction for students absenting themselves. I believe this is covered in our policy, our makeup policy. We continue to provide that for students, whether they're absent for pesticides or any reason. We work with them to make sure that work is made up. That does add, as you can see, provide for oral notification to pupils and employees during the regular school session. Also, we currently post on the website. We've had a monthly newsletter with posting this. That's the monthly newsletter is not taking place, so we're going to be working on doing some other posting things for this. Also, we're provided the new requirement is provide written, electronic, or telephonic notification to parents or guardians at least 48 hours prior to the application of pesticides. We are working on the processes for that. They are scratching maintain written records of pesticide application because I believe that when we do provide written notice, we will already have all the written records of pesticide applications with what's required in that. So those are the additions and subtractions from this policy. I'll be glad to take any questions you may have.
Ms. Doan, any questions or comments?
No.
Mr. Sandoval?
Mr. Croto, quick question for you. So when the communication goes out, does it go out in a way that addresses the dynamics of our student population, meaning, language barriers potentially? Some of our students are cared for by grandparents who may be, Spanish dominant. So does it go out in a way that it speaks to, all that we serve?
We are working on those processes, Mr. Sandoval, so it certainly can take that into account. We currently are working on the processes, so when you approve this in 2 weeks, finally, that those processes will be in place. So we can certainly take those language barriers into account and provide for that, definitely.
Ms. Connect? Ms. Penderle? And I do not have any as well.
Okay. I believe we're going to approve one at a time, so they're one agenda item at a time.
Okay. That's a great plan. So I need a motion for this. No, this is not action. Remember, the second goes into consent.
Sorry. My fault. Almost threw you off. The second policy is EEAEA. Try to say that fast. Bus driver requirements, training, and responsibilities. The requirements for the IVF card, which is Identity Verified Fingerprint Card, as outlined in ARS 15106. This policy is adding, you can see underlined in red, bus drivers shall submit an Identity Verified Fingerprint Card as described in ARS 15106 that the Department of Public Safety shall use to process the fingerprint clearance card as outlined in ARS 15106. A person who is issued a school bus driver certificate shall maintain a valid identity verified fingerprint clearance card for the duration of any school bus driver certification period. This is adding language to our policy. We currently already operate in this manner, so this is an addition to our policy to bring our policy current.
Any comments? Mr. Sandoval? Ms. Doan?
No.
I have one question.
Okay.
And it's as a result that it was already, not your change. It's the word cost. The district will assume the cost. So we're assuming the cost for the bus drivers, which is our certified subject. How come we don't assume the cost for any other groups of employees for the fingerprint card? My concern with this is we don't know what our funding source will be in the future, and if it gets worse and we're assuming the cost, that's my concern.
Right. Currently, that's our current policy,
Right.
is assuming the cost of the required physical examinations. So it doesn't necessarily outline that we're covering the cost of the card. It's just we require the cost of, or we pay for the cost of the required physical exams that they currently have.
Do we know
to have.
roughly how much that is?
I do not.
No.
I don't,
I can find out for you.
And that's at a later time. I'm just curious that if this is something, a policy we are going to continue with, and we start to discuss other employee groups, will we be assuming the cost going forward for all other employee groups? If those groups start to come to us and identify these policies, we're assuming a cost of the bus drivers, but we're not assuming a cost of others.
I understand.
Well, let's find it out before we make that jump.
if Mrs. Sayas Martinez and Mr. Croto, can I say, if we focus on the blue change, no, just for a minute, that we're good with. It's what's currently in that we would be revisiting then, right? So we're not seeing anything with respect to what we're changing, but it's a thought on, I don't know what the cost of, what the physical exam actually is.
Am I not understanding the question? It says the drivers will assume the cost of getting the driver's license.
So the district will assume the cost of required physical examinations.
Right, that's an eye exam and a
Correct.
hearing test or something like that, but the employees will have to get the
CDL.
right, the CDA. Is it CDA?
CDL.
CDL.
Yeah.
So the cost of the required physical exams, do any other employee groups take physical exams?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. If we're going to do a review of policy, I just want to make sure that
Duly
this
noted. I
is
wrote it down for the policy review, that we need to look at this.
those
for
types
other
of
groups.
costs, things that are embedded in our policy that we are going to take on going forward.
Yeah, and that's not new, correct?
That's not new,
That's not
correct.
new.
We currently follow that practice.
Right. And this would be the opportunity if we were going to change a practice. Now is the time to speak up. Ms. Myers, do we have an idea of what those costs are? I know you were looking and you had the mic.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Palace Thompson, we can certainly provide that expenditure information to you in a Friday report. I don't have it available tonight.
Okay. All right, so I don't have a problem with any of the verbiage as it makes us compliant with the law. And my only question would be around the cost going forward. Thank you.
So let me ask for clarification so that we know for the next meeting, are we comfortable that this one would be one that, based on the change, we would be putting in for consent? Based on the blue, with the understanding that we would go back and revisit that component?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with the policy as presented.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next policy is EEAG, Student Transportation in Private Vehicles. Prior to student transportation in private vehicles, this policy is to acknowledge employee or governing board auto insurance as the primary coverage. If you're using your car, a private vehicle, that is our current practice. This policy is adding, as you can see in the blue, or governing board members. And that is the recommendation by ASBA. The other pieces of the policy stand. It's just adding the governing board members to that policy, as well as the employees.
Ms. Doan, any questions?
No.
Mr. Sanibel? Ms. Penderle? Ms. Connect?
That has not been in the policy before. In my tenure, there has not ever been an instance where the school board members were using district
Right.
vehicles. I would not be in favor of adding it. I think it's an added liability that we don't have a need for.
And this is, Mrs. Connect, this is for if you're using private vehicle for district purposes. This is not for the, it's each district employee or governing board member authorized to use a private vehicle for district purposes. So your own private vehicle shall be notified in writing that the employee or governing board's automobile insurance is the primary coverage and district insurance is a secondary coverage.
That's just so we can't sue them.
Oh, okay, I understand
we
now.
can't sue them.
Thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
I'm all in favor.
I have no questions. So this one is in good order.
Okay. Okay, the next policy is EEB, Business and Personal Transportation Services. Prior to student transportation in a private vehicle, this is to acknowledge the employee or governing board auto insurance, again, is the primary coverage. If you look on page 2, they'll bring up the blue. The use of school vehicles, there are about 4 paragraphs that are changed this policy. So no school vehicle shall be used for personal business unless the personal business is incidental to a school-related trip. On a space available basis, an employee or governing board member's family may be included on an out-of-town trip if approval is granted by the superintendent. Only governing board members or district employees may drive the vehicle. A school vehicle shall not be taken to an employee or governing board member's home at night unless the employee or governing board member has permission from the superintendent. So that paragraph we currently operate, again, it's adding or governing board members in that paragraph. The use of a private vehicle, again, it's adding governing board to the private vehicle. If I just read that second paragraph down there, it says an employee or governing board member using a private vehicle for a school trip shall not claim mileage for any purely personal use of that vehicle during the trip. Okay, so it just clarifies that you can't claim the mileage if you went on a trip and then drove somewhere else. Each district employee, the next paragraph, or governing board member authorized to use a private vehicle for district purposes shall be notified in writing that the employees or governing board members' automobile insurance is the primary coverage. Again, that overlaps with the last policy that we did. The new piece to this policy is each employee or governing board member authorized to use a private vehicle for school business purposes will be required to present proof of insurance to the district. Again, it's the coverage of liability so that they know that since it is the primary insurance, that you do have insurance and the district is in compliance, and the district will be in the second position on that. And that is the additions to that policy.
Excellent. Ms. Dunn?
I'm good with it.
Mr. Sanibel? Ms. Penderle? All right, and I appreciate the risk adverse, and that one's in good order as well.
Okay. Our next policy, I believe it's the sixth one. No, maybe it's the fifth. I lost count. EFDA, policy EFDA, collection of money and food tickets. There's a massive change to this policy. You will see all the strike-through paragraphs. Those are kind of rewritten into this first paragraph. So I am going to read this first paragraph. I anticipate a lot of questions about this policy. So I do have Sandra Sashow, our Director of Food Services, here to answer your questions about our current practices with this. So EFDA, collection of money and food tickets. To ensure students receive the nutrition they need to stay focused during the school day, the district shall maintain a meal charge program that minimizes identification of children with insufficient funds to pay for school meals and maintain the financial integrity of the district food service fund account. Further, the district shall abide by program regulations 7 CFR 245.5 by providing parents and guardians of all children who attend the school in the district information regarding the availability of reimbursable school meals, and must be provided in writing information about applying for free and reduced price meals. The district will promote activities to involve students and parents or guardians in the school meal programs and inform families about the availability of all district meal programs. The district shall include students, families, and the school community in establishing and developing a communication plan for the district's meal charge policy that complements the public announcement of meal eligibility requirements in 7 CFR 245.5 and is consistent with the involvement required in 7 CFR 201.12. So everything that's strike through is basically moved to the paragraph or the next page. Not a page on you. We are adding some language that says the district provides the following regarding meal charges. For all types of reimbursable meals, all students are allowed to charge up to 2 meals. A student who has reached the limit of 2 charged meals will be provided a designated meal that is offered to all students. At least one advanced communication shall be given to the student and the parent or guardian prior to providing additional meals beyond the conditions established by the district. Communication shall explain the procedure should the student not have sufficient funds to pay for a meal. The district shall make a reasonable effort to collect unpaid meal charges classified as delinquent debt. The district shall ensure that efforts to collect delinquent debt do not have a negative impact on the student involved. Such efforts shall focus primarily on the parents or guardians responsible for providing for the student funds for meals. When the district determines that collection efforts for delinquent debt are useless or too costly, The debt must be classified as bad debt as defined in 2 CFR 200. So those are the additions. It is basically seeing the striked out material into the 2 additions in the paragraphs. Covers that and a little bit more. So we will stand for some questions. Sandra, would you like to join me if there are any questions?
Ms. Connect? Ms. Penderle?
I just wanted to clarify, so, I mean, it didn't look like there was a lot of changes. There's 2 charges that you can do, and that's the same in the new, 2 additional meals. And then on the other one, our policy right now is very clear in that they will, I don't know where it's at, they will deny after that second meal. But they've changed it. Is that correct, that there's not just 2 additional meals beyond the charge?
President
Want to make sure.
Martinez, members of the board, that is correct. It used to be that high school couldn't charge at all. Then we allowed them the 1 charge because of having the ID card. They couldn't see how much money they had left unless their parent told them. We've changed it to 2 charges for all kids so that it's fair and open to all kids. If a student doesn't hear it, then of course they're getting a second try to hear it. Then also we have an email that goes home every week. There's charge calls that go home. So we're trying to do our best to make sure the parent gets that information. We're making personal phone calls after 2 charges. But yes, after 2, they do get the cheese sandwich, that thing that everyone hates. We actually added it to the menu for all kids, and I had a lot of managers saying, I had 40 kids buy the cheese sandwich today. Okay, that's what they want to choose. So they do get that, and that's where they're making extra effort to make sure that the parent knows you need to send money for the student. Okay. It's our worst thing we have to deal with, is no money.
Thank you for.
Mr. Sandoval?
Quick question, the meal charges, that first long paragraph. And I mean, I think it's great that we have activities. I'm assuming I'm thinking about the word activities in the proper way, but it says the district will promote activities to involve students and parents or guardians in the school meal programs and inform families about the availability of all district meal programs. What types of activities take place?
We do a lot of the media releases. I used one of these for our notes, giving out these to parents so that they know about the information. And then our school wellness policy, as far as letting them know about that. Any of the school functions that we can get a part of, we go out there and take our advertisements, letting parents know. At Murphy 5K, we've handed out fruit and say, hey, did you know about the free and reduced? Did you know about free breakfast? We try to get out as much as we can.
That's great, thank you.
Ms. Dunn?
No, I don't have any questions, thank you.
I do. I am concerned with the 2 meals, food shaming. I'll be the first one to throw myself under the bus. Sometimes I forget. I get the phone calls and the emails and the school buck emails, and I always have to go through my, and I look at all our demographics. I think 2 meals, I know we came to this conclusion from my understanding, some background was of costs related to our district, but these are our children, and if they can't eat, I want them to have the same opportunities and every other child of all the other things to have food. So I'm not comfortable and to move forward with the 2 meals.
President Sejas Martinez, I will tell you, we have also, at many of the schools, they already had a donation account. And we've actually made sure that every school has it now. That donation account can be funded through parent donations, PTSO donations. We had a preschool teacher that collected money from her preschool students. This is an out-of-district preschool. Said, hey, I have $200. I'd like to put it on Alta Loma because that's where she used to go to school. So we actually use that as another way, and we tell the kids, you're borrowing from the principal. Then they wake up and go, oh, I got to make sure I bring money. And same thing with that phone call, because our managers hate it. A lot of them, they put their own money in there. The problem is if you don't have some sort of limit, you will go from, I brought an article that was $13,000 in Denver up to $365,000. Tucson used to have $6,000, then they were up to $80,000. If you don't have a limit, parents go, why bother, why send money?
Exactly.
Right.
Managers hate it, the kids hate it.
Yeah.
But that's why with all the phone calls, making the personal calls, I've told them, if it's third grade and under, you better make a call after the first charge. Anyone else after the second, so the parent knows.
So would it be appropriate that we make sure we look at a policy, our little kids, our K2, our K5, other options? I recognize the cost, but sometimes parents at home just don't have it. I was never aware that there was a donation opportunity to donate for kids to have lunch money. And that's definitely something I would like that communicated more often. If people who want to donate, they can. I just cannot see, I know my son, he's like, I don't want a cheese sandwich because one identifies him that he didn't bring his lunch. He charged his lunch and he just won't eat. So then the kids at the table offer their food and some of the procedures and policies don't allow them to share. So I'm concerned with the 2 meals, and maybe we need to look at do some research. Do we have any data to support how many kids charge? Have we seen, obviously we have a cap, so we've seen a decrease as a result of that decrease, but do we have any grade level, the most charges? Do we have school sites? Is it Title I? Where are these charges taking place?
We actually have gone up a little. We usually finish the year about 1,500. Because we've allowed 2 charges and allowing high school to charge, we finish this year about 3,000 in the negative. And that carries with them to the next year unless those kids withdraw. And of course, every kid eats on the first week. We don't do any kind of you hit your max the first week. With K through 2, I will tell you most of the time they just let it slide and give the kid a meal. Because they're managers and they have to face the kids. High schools are our worst. They know they can get away with it. They know they can just charge and then go on their way. The little kids are the best about bringing in the money.
High school kids are spending their lunch money on.
I have 2 questions that this conversation sparked in my head. One, just to clarify, no kid goes hungry.
No.
Ever.
No. And they get, honestly, it was just the cheese sandwich and the milk. But to take away that stigma, it's the 4th entree for every student, available to every student. And it's the cheese sandwich with lettuce and tomato, so it looks like a normal entree. And they get the fruit and the vegetable and the milk. So it looks like any other meal.
That's good to hear. And when those phone calls are made, do we take that opportunity to assess if there's a real financial need and perhaps those families are eligible for the federal lunch program?
They definitely let them know about it. They know the kids. They've already reached out to them beforehand. The biggest group are those ones that make just too much, where they can't afford $250 a day, but they don't qualify for free or reduced. They miss it by $50.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of stuck on what they do.
Do we have specific schools that have a trend, that have higher charges?
No, it's just across the board. It doesn't matter if you're Estancia or Alta Loma. If you get some of your higher free and reduced schools, the charges come from those kids that the parents haven't filled out the free and reduced application yet. So then the charges just sit there. And usually those donation accounts, we pay them off with that. But you're middle of the road in the higher income, that's where you get your charges because, like I said, they just don't qualify. And as the minimum wage goes up, you'll have more people dropping off, yet they still can't afford lunch. So.
Well, for me, and having school-age children at the elementary level, I'm not comfortable with 2 meals. I would love to hear if there's any other debate from my fellow governing board members, but I also recognize it needs to have a cap.
Well, I mean, I'm comfortable with 2 meals, but you had said that it goes beyond 2 meals. You don't not give a child lunch.
Right, they will always get
They will always
food.
get it. So 2 meals is just, so there's more phone calls to parents. But it's not like if you don't cap it at 2, I mean, they are going to get lunch. And it's going to be, you said it's not just a sandwich, it's fruit, it's milk.
Mm-hmm. It's a whole meal. If they want chocolate milk, they can take the chocolate milk. Yeah.
I'm comfortable with this. I think it's good.
Have we ever had discussion for adding staff? Because we have some staff that are sometimes in need and they may not eat.
We're not allowed by USDA to give away the meals to staff. It's only to the students.
Thank you for that clarity. Okay, it sounds like the majority of the board is going to move forward with two, so.
Mrs. Sayas Martinez, and I hear you with the two, was embedded in there, though, is where the district will promote activities to involve students and parents or guardians in school, meal programs. It'll be up to, once you approve that policy, for us to do a good job alleviating your concerns as far as really advertising, and I know Sandra does a wonderful job at coming together, and so you're not sleeping at night over it then.
Thank you. And those voicemails, did they come in Spanish as well?
They do not.
Definitely something looking at Spanish interpretation of that
That would be an
voicemail.
example of what we need to do to enforce what you're approving.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, next policy, FEA, Educational Specifications for Construction. This is adding the top background. It allows the governing board to delegate authority to the superintendent to submit plans for new school facilities. The paragraph reads, the governing board may delegate authority in writing to the superintendent to submit plans for new school facilities to the school facilities board for the purpose of certifying the plans, that the plans meet the minimum school facility adequacy guidelines prescribed in ARS 15, 2011. We currently use this process. This is adding the language to our board policy, so we're in compliance.
Ms. Doan, Mr. Sanibel, Ms. Penderle, Ms. Connect, and I don't have any comments as well.
Okay, and last but not least, community use of school facilities. The school district and its governing board, employees and agents are now required to be named as additional insured under liability insurance policy during the facility, use of facilities and property. So they are recommending that we add, it's blue for you or it's red now. I don't know which color you're looking at, to tell you the truth. It's blue here and red. The underlined and the underlined paragraph. Proof of liability insurance shall be required for the use or lease of school property pursuant to ARS 15-1105. The school district and its governing board, employees, and agents shall be named as an additional insured under the liability insurance policy during the use of facilities and property. And then it's adding in the next paragraph, the school district and its employees, including the governing board, superintendent, or chief and executive level administration, are immune from civil liability. So it's adding the executive level in administration onto that. And this is a liability piece covering the school district and its governing board employees when we rent facilities or lease our facilities. So that is the addition to this.
Ms. Doan, Mr. Sanibel, Ms. Connect, Ms. Penderle. All right, and I have no comments either.
But
All right, so we went through the first read. Thank you so
First read.
much.
Thank you very
And it
much.
looks like everything is in good order and will be in a consent agenda item at our next board meeting.
And I will get some information on the physical exams and the costs for you.
Okay,
And
thank
provide
you
that in
so
the
much.
report. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and effort. All right, we are moving on to informational reports, 11.1, Budget, Facilities, Planning, and Construction. They can be found online for review, and 11.2. Oh,
Did
did it get skip? I did it again. We're making great progress here. 10.10. That's what I skipped. 10.10, report and discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues and activities.
Good evening again, President Ceja Martinez, members of the Governing Board, Superintendent Pallas Thompson. I'd like to share that yesterday, the Arizona Treasurer, Eileen Klein, reported that the Permanent Land Endowment Trust Fund, from which state trust land is sold, reached the highest value in history. With investment earnings, the market value of the trust exceeded $6 billion. Approximately 93% of the trust benefits K-12 public education. The distribution of funds from the trust is calculated at 2.5% of the 5-year average value of the K-12 portion of the trust going to the Classroom Site Fund and Prop 301. Also, 4.4% of the 5-year average value of the educational portion of the trust goes to the State General Fund to help pay for the portion of the total cost of implementing Prop 123, which was also the inflation funding lawsuit. With the trust fund reaching a record high and with significant increases during the last 5 years, there has been increased district and charter funding in Prop 301, Classroom Site Fund, and additional dollars to the state to fund that portion of Prop 123. This additional funding has already been estimated for fiscal 2019. However, when looking at the increase in the value, the potential for increased distributions in future years is also a strong possibility. There is the potential that with additional funds from the 4.4% distribution to help fund an increased portion of the cost of Prop 123, the legislature might consider additional funding for districts and charters in the future.
Would be great.
That ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Now 11.1, Budget Facilities Planning Construction Report can be found online. 11.2, Report on Upcoming Meetings and Events. Ms. Aries, is there anything we should highlight? Thank you very much. And 12.1, Draft Agenda for the August 23rd, 2018 Board Meeting. I would like this to be pulled up, and there is real data line items. We have worked really hard as a team, and you should see for the next projection all the way through October, these agenda items are pretty up to date. So if any parents, community members, teachers want to know what is going to happen, they are outlined of what is going to be discussed. Thank you very much, Michelle.
Thank you.
All right, and number 12.2, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Ms. Doan? Mr. Sanibel? Ms. Connect? Ms. Penderle? I do have one. I know we have a long list, but since this is the new school year and I'm starting to see policies, and I would like to discuss, I would like a report on and then a presentation on behavior programs within classrooms that address social and emotional consequences. Is there a uniform approach in our classrooms, and the risk and liabilities to our district with some of these programs?
I'll second that.
Thank you. And then I'll follow up for clarity.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 13, I need a motion to adjourn.
During the meeting.
I second. We have a motion by Ms. Dunn, a second by myself to adjourn the meeting at 8:29.
Well done. Well done.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody, for your patience, and you all have a wonderful evening.